I'm Alfred Bennett. I'm one of the teachers here at the Global Leaders Academy. I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about critical reading passages. We wanted to give you a sense of our strategies, the strategies that we use during our summer intensive to help you with your passage comprehension and your question answering. If you can click the link next to the video here, we have a passage that we prepared for you that we'd like you to download so that you can read it as I read along. You may want to pause the movie for a second while you download the passage. This passage was developed by a member of our staff here at Dr. Yang, and I want to talk to you today about 3 techniques that can help you when dealing with especially your longer passages, but also with some of these shorter passages. Those are the techniques of active reading, visualization, and rewording. So, active reading. We all have the tendency to get a little bit lazy when we read, and often the human brain will simply just process words without actually thinking of the meaning behind those words. That's very dangerous on the SAT. What you can find happening is that many of your answer choices will simply be similar word formations to what you found within the text, but won't be the same meaning. The way you can combat that is by becoming an active reader. And what that means is that you would do processes such as closing your eyes and imagining the scenario that's being described in the passage, or by rewording or paraphrasing the sentences that you read, so that you will activate the part of your mind that is creating a visual picture of what's being said, rather than simply memorizing a series of words. So let me show you what I mean. Our first passage here is about spam. Just to give you a little sense of what visualization is. Obviously, you can't bring a can of spam to the exam. Spam. But you can close your eyes and use your imagination. So let's practice this as we read this passage together. Why spend billions of dollars on jets when you can win a war with a $2 can of processed meat? Now, you can all imagine for yourself a large armada of jets flying over a certain area. And then you can also imagine a can of spam flying over that same area. It's a silly image, I know, but it helps you understand that this question is silly. This question is supposed to be a bit amusing. It's supposed to have humor. And it's supposed to also be a little puzzling. Why would we be comparing billions of dollars on jets with processed meat? What do the two things have in common? And because we took the time to close our eyes and imagine the actual jets flying overhead, and imagine the actual can of spam flying overhead, we're not twisted around in any of the language. We're not going to be confused by it. Similarly, moving on to the next sentence. Since its creation in 1937, spam has provided troops from around the world with meat in situations that would normally be purely vegetarian. So if you imagine the year's 1937, it's the introduction into World War II, and we're on the front lines, and there is no meat available. You can imagine the hunger. You can imagine the men having to eat cold beans, and all of these images, while they seem a little silly to be thinking all this, help you to create the full picture of what the argument is behind this essay, behind this passage. So here, you can imagine how important it would be in a cold, rainy ditch, surrounded by people with the bombs and all these things going off, to have meat, to be able to sustain yourself, to nourish yourself. So again, the process of visualization here has given us a complete understanding of what the argument is, the importance of spam within fighting a war. Let's go to the next paragraph. It's no wonder that the Spam Museum in Austin, Minnesota is often cited, if only by spam enthusiasts, as a World War II historic site. As a little-known assembly line worker once proudly announced, "Without meat, certain defeat." So you can imagine a huge museum with, on the top of it, a big can of spam. It's a rather amusing sight. What this should tell you is that this passage has a tone of humor. So as I read the passage, I make marks of things like tone as I read. There's other processes, of course, that we'll go over in our different classes together, but today we're just going to focus on this one. Now, if you go to passage 2, Just to cite one more time, at the end of passage 1, without meat, certain defeat. When you have rhymes inserted into passages, words that rhyme, there is a kind of humor associated with rhyming. You can imagine a Dr. Seuss or a Hickory Dickory Dock kind of language. So when you read this, you should be, through the picturing of it, without meat, certain defeat, through picturing an assembly line worker who is watching all the cans of Spam go by, saying something like this. It's a ridiculous image. And that can help you understand very clearly what the tone is. Now let's look at passage 2. A war has never been won on the basis of firepower alone. Now, immediately we can picture one side having many guns, another side having many guns. And this is saying that just because you have more guns doesn't mean that you are going to win the battle. Now, what I did there was a combination of visualizing. There are many guns here, many guns here. That's not going to determine the winner. So that was a visualization process. But it was also a rewording process. The process of, instead of repeating what's exactly written in the sentence, I paraphrased it, such that I've activated the part of my brain that is cognitive, that is about full understanding of an idea, not simply memorization. Memorization is your worst enemy on the passive section. Now, let's go to the next sentence. For every tank glistening in the sunlight of a conquered capital, there lies another rusting long ago, depleted of fuel. Again, here we can visualize a beautiful tank that's just won a battle. Maybe there's planes flying overhead. The capital is in flames. This beautiful shining tank with the emblem of a foreign nation comes into the capital, while the tank with the emblem of the nation that has fallen is rusting on the side. So you have this image in your mind. It would behoove our current leaders to remember that William Wallace of Scotland pushed back superior numbers of English soldiers, as did the Roman legions for centuries. The SS and Nazi Germany struck terror in the hearts of millions, even though they numbered in the thousands. These would be examples, again, very vivid examples that you can close your eyes and imagine all of them, which will support the idea that it doesn't matter who has more guns. And the second sentence, if we can go back to that for a minute, is presenting the image that with an equal amount of firepower, with both people having a tank, one person still wins and one person still loses. So again, all these images help us form a complete picture of the argument here. And then finally, the last sentence. So many variables determine the outcome of a military expedition, it makes almost any battle seem a fool's errand. Now, rewording becomes very important when you encounter sentences like this, because the last words here are what we call idioms. Idioms are phrases whose meaning has been changed over time. So to say something is a fool's errand means it's a place or an activity that only a fool would undertake because you're certain to lose. You are guaranteed of defeat. So you can see by my rewording of the idiom, it's cemented an understanding of what the meaning is here. We also see that the tone here, there was nothing funny about this. A rusting tank, a glistening tank, the scenes from these various movies or these times through history, none of these things are humorous in nature. So we know that there's a different tone in passage 2. Now, there are many other techniques that we use when answering these questions. I'm not going to get into any more today. We're just going to leave you with those. But let's look at some of the questions that we might have been helped with just by using